Hey Rich, how's it going?
Hey, good. Let me
Sorry, let
just
me put the video on. Sorry,
go.
I had to yeah. You had to look at my beautiful safe and behind my head.
But okay, looks like we are live though. So, hey everybody, welcome to another episode of Lead Talks, where we talk with um, instructors from the San Diego, the Inland Empire, and Orange County regions. And it's just a chance for you to get to know like the local instructor community, you know, get to know, get a flavor for what they're like, and then also for them to share a topic of interest, to actually teach you something about about something that they have to offer. And then tonight we have Garrett Post from the Protector Academy, right? And then he is going to be talking about what was the topic that you had for us, Garrett?
Asking for help in the gun community.
Which I think is an excellent topic because a lot of times people, uh, can let their ego stop them from really learning, right? And
Yeah.
so, with that, I'm going to hand it over to Garrett.
Awesome, thank you. So everyone, my name is Garrett. My company is just called The Protectors. You know, my website is just theprotectorsusa.com. I don't sell any guns, so YouTube don't nuke that, right? Or whatever streaming service. But for me, like when I started getting into guns a few years ago, it's really overwhelming because you're just going, okay, well, where do I even start with this, right? Like, do I just go on Yelp and say, okay, well, gun stores, right? Or whatever. So there's a lot of trepidation. And then you don't want to just walk into a store and look like an idiot. That's something that is very concerning to people as well. So I was very lucky that a very good friend of mine had an uncle that was a retired SWAT officer. So when I was just getting into it, I had that resource I could use, which was very beneficial to me. And now I get to be that resource for a lot of my friends and family as well. So I'm very, very fortunate in that regards that I had very good people I could run by, like run stuff by. And even still today, I mean, I'm no expert. I just sit here and go, hey, if I'm not sure about something, I'll ask people that know more than me, right? You never know, and you never know too much to ask for advice, in my opinion. So I kind of ran through some points before this. Um, I said I'm talking about asking for help in the gun world. So the first big point, in my opinion, is how do I even ask for help and where do I start? So when you're starting out, if you know somebody, if you got a friend that's into guns, that's a place to start, right? If you got friends that are cops, if you got, if you just happen to know where a local gun store is, those are good places to start. Or even just Google and YouTube. They do actually have gun content on there. If you're if you're unaware, there's a lot of very, very good people that do product reviews and that kind of stuff. So you can go on and watch testing and that sort of things. And I will say that has either stopped me or encouraged me to buy certain products just by seeing how how the test results come back from experienced reviewers. So that's a good place to start, right? We have the internet, it's free, it does help us out a bit. So use it, right? And use your friends that know stuff. Ask them. They'll gun people will gladly talk to you about guns. In fact, you won't be able to get us to shut up about it. Now, the next question after that is, okay, well, how do I buy a gun? Well, an easy solution to this is again the internet. We just go online and look up, hey, I live in X state. How do I buy a gun in this state? Um, or if you don't really want to do that on the internet for whatever reason, you can just call a local gun store and say, hey, how do I buy a gun from you? And they will tell you. They will very happily tell you, right? Because that's kind of how they stay in business is selling guns. It typically in most states, not California, of course, but in most places you can just go on, you just go into the store, fill out the background check form, wait for it to clear, pay for your gun, and you walk out with the gun. Pretty simple. In California, however, we have, do the form, which is pretty much the same process, except you don't get to leave with it that day. You just got a 10-day waiting period, which is to the literal second that you submit the paperwork. So other than that, it's pretty much the same. And then we also have the firearm safety certificate test you have to take, which is 30 very basic questions that pretty much anyone who is around guns should be able to answer. If you can't, uh, please don't go to the range with me, right? Jokes aside, that's the next point, right? So where do I start? Ask your friends, go online. How do you buy a gun? Call the gun store, they'll tell you. Now, another question that, I mean, I've had in the past, these are questions, in case you guys are wondering, these are questions that I've asked in the past when I was starting to get into guns, and I've, you know, heard people in my life go, hey, how do I do this or that? So that's where I kind of came up with these from, right? It's pretty common questions that are in the gun world. So the next one I came up with is how do I even find a gun store that is good? And well, reviews are a thing. Now, it's not perfect. And frankly, I'll look at reviews for places, but I do like to go into them if they're close to me to check it out. And you can talk to the employees and you'll probably figure out relatively quickly if it's worth it for you to stay in that store or if you should just leave. In my area, I'm very lucky to have several very good gun stores that have selection and people that are friendly. So hopefully you guys all have that as well, right? Yeah, you just go in there, talk to people, have a fun conversation, and you might learn something. And don't be afraid to ask questions, right? I understand it's kind of scary. Like we don't want to look like idiots when we go in and we ask us, a question that's very simple to people that know about guns. But for people who don't, everything is a mystery. And as the gunsmith I go to has very eloquently put it, you don't know what you don't know. So don't be afraid to ask a question, even if it's kind of stupid. You might get slapped with a little sarcasm, but you're still going to learn something, which might be very important to you. So don't be afraid to ask kind of dumb questions, right? And if the store is very rude to you about it, then you probably don't want to give them your business. Now, the next question that's pretty important to a lot of people, especially these days, is how much money do I need to spend? Right. And anyone who's bought guns knows that you get what you pay for. So you're looking at a few $100s. And what you have to factor into that is not only just the cost of the gun, but the cost of accessories like your magazines, your flashlights, your holster, or your bag if you off body carry, training, ammunition. That's the one that really will get you, especially over time. So there's things that you have to look into as well when you're considering buying a gun, not just the gun price, right? Because you go, okay, well, I can afford $800. So, I'm going to buy an $800 gun. And it's like, well, okay, but now you can't afford to train with it. You can't even afford to buy ammunition. Thing only comes with, two magazines. So how's that going to work when you could also just buy something cheaper for $500 or $600, let's say, and then you have that extra money to buy some ammunition, buy a holster, and go out to the range. Right? Maybe you can't afford the spare magazines yet, but you might be able to later. So that's just something that we all need to keep in mind when we're buying something, especially when you're newer into your journey down the gun rabbit hole, right? Those of us that have been there, done that, we are all too familiar with that whole process of, oh, this cost twice as much as I planned for because I'm impulse buying a lot, right? So stuff like that. Um, After that, how do I know what I need? Well, you kind of know what you need based on the purpose of the gun you're buying, right? Whether it's for concealed carry, home defense, or just a fun range toy. So what you're going to need will depend on that, right? If it's just a range toy, you aren't going to need as many things as for home defense or concealed carry. So that's some stuff to keep in mind as well. And again, if you're wondering kind of, where do you go? Talk to your gun friends, consult the interwebs. There's a lot of very good resources out there, and there's a lot of people that are willing to help and have knowledge. Now, there are also idiots out there, and you kind of got to be aware of that. It's just, it is what it is. And I understand that as a new gun owner, it's really scary when you're going in and you're asking for advice. And especially when the consequences is you go to jail potentially for years at a time, or you die. So we're playing with some very heavy stakes here. So I understand for the newer people that that's something that really weighs heavily on your mind, and it does scare a lot of people out of getting into the firearms community because there's some pretty high stakes and pretty high consequences for being misinformed, for having bad equipment, right? It's really scary sometimes to think about that kind of stuff, especially in a state like California, where our laws are totally not designed in any way, shape, and form to get a bunch of good people put in jail. Definitely not, right? So it kind of comes down to make sure that you just talk to people who know what they're talking about and know what they're doing. Um, and again, the biggest thing is just don't be afraid to ask the questions. You're not going to go wrong by gaining new knowledge, right? Even if you look silly for a couple minutes, who cares? If that's the worst part of your day, you've had an amazing day, and be grateful for that. In terms of what gun you should buy, it comes down to, again, something reliable that you can use effectively, you enjoy training with, what fits your needs, and what you can afford. Which, again, for all of us goes into like whether you're considering a new concealed carry pistol, a new rifle, a shotgun, whatever you're thinking about buying, right? If unless it's specifically a range toy, these are things you got to think about. Now, if you're just buying something because it seems kind of fun to shoot, right, but serves no practical purpose, or you're not going to use it for a practical purpose, then that's kind of just out the window, right? Um, Another important question is, how do I know what a good gun for me is? And to that, I would say, does it have a good reputation, especially for reliability? Does it suit your needs? Can you afford it? Does its ergonomics work for you? Can you take it apart for cleaning and maintenance and put it back together? Will you train with it? Can you get the proper accessories for it for what you need to do? Right? Like, can you buy a holster? Is there a weapon mounted light you could get if you need that? Spare magazines, that kind of stuff, right? All very important things that you need to be aware of and you need to consider for really anything. Now, in terms of asking for help, you go, okay, well, now I've got my gun, I got my accessories, I know how to use my gun, like I know how to take it apart and put it back together. Now, where do I find training? Well, you can go to your local gun store and ask if they know any good instructors. You can go to the local range and use their instructors, or you can look up instructors from the USCCA or NRA or any other training organization that's out there because they do list all of our classes that we put up there, right? So if you find my portal on the USCCA, shameless plug, you will also find all my classes I have listed, right? And if you're in this area, they'll pop up for you. You can search for your local area. You can search a bigger radius, wherever you want, right? If you're traveling, you can look for classes in those cities. So there was very, very good resources that we are incredibly lucky to have now that didn't exist not too long ago. So that's one of the biggest things. And reviews exist for a reason, right? Um, for guys like Jim and Mike, who are part of this organization as well, they have very good reputations. So they get a lot of business from that, right? So chances are if somebody has a ton of 5-star reviews, they're probably a pretty good trainer. So just stuff like that, right? Where you go out there, you find instructors that have, you know, the accolades, they have the credentials, they have the reviews. And I mean, most of them have a way you can get in contact with them if you're still unsure and you want to talk to them. And don't be afraid to say, hey, I'm nervous. I've never shot this gun before. I just got this gun. I've never shot it. I haven't shot in years. Like whatever your personal situation is, just be upfront with it. Good instructors are not going to make fun of you. They're not going to put you down. They're not going to belittle you. They're going to help you because they want to help you. All right. So if you have questions, ask them, right? The next big thing is how do I know if I'm getting my money's worth? Avoid, and sorry, how do I avoid buyer's remorse from buying garbage products? Well, if the product you buy fulfills your desired purpose and works well, then it was worth it, right? I personally have not regretted buying any product that I use that's been good. That's just me. And again, I'd say do your research before you buy, especially if you're on a budget. Google and YouTube are free to use for all of us, right? So if you're not sure about a product, just go on there on those places, check it out. If it's got a lot of bad feedback, maybe avoid it. If it's got mixed feedback, see if you know anybody who has one. It's one of those things, right? And a lot of stuff can be subjective, especially if you're talking about like ergonomics of certain handguns. It's incredibly subjective because what some people like, some people might not. So there's just a lot of stuff to consider. Like for instance, when I was picking out, when my wife was going to get a handgun, before she got one, before we spent money on it, I just took her to a range that offered rentals, and we went through like 10 or 12 different handguns, and we, decided on what she liked because it fit her. She felt comfortable shooting it, and she would enjoy shooting the gun. So went out and bought a similar one to that. So that's a good way if you're on a budget, especially go just shoot a bunch of different guns. And again, your gun loving friends are an incredible resource in this because they probably will love to take you out to shoot some of their guns, as long as you are obeying the safety rules and not being judgy about it, right? Or, just like as long as you're coming in with an open mind and with the intention of being safe and a good student, your friends will be happy to take you out. Another question is, well, how do I know where to train at? Again, it's similar. You just find a range that's close to you, that works for you, and has what you need. Or if you aren't close to one or you don't like the ranges that are close to you, you can go out to public lands like BLM lands to shoot. Bureau of Land Management, for those who don't know, not the other BLM that's been in the news recently, in the last several years. So you can go out to public lands to shoot. Just make sure you clean up after yourself. And regardless of where you train, this is something that goes for everybody listening that's still a gun person. There's a product called Lead Off, or you can get a similar lead wipe. You can use that to wipe down your stuff after you go shoot, like your phone, your bag, whatever, like your water bottles, whatever you take out to go shoot. You can wipe off all the lead from it so you don't get lead poisoning, because that would, is not fun. It's a really good product. I don't get paid for promoting it. I just tell people go buy this because it's a good product. I wish they'd pay me. That'd be nice, but they don't. The next big thing is okay. Now I got my gun. I know where I'm training. What accessories do I need for it? And I say again, this is defined by the purpose of your gun. You're always going to need an optic or iron sights, some way to aim, a sling or holster, and a flashlight, unless you decide you want to go with a handgun and a handheld light, like the cop TV shows. I don't recommend getting your gun knowledge from those, but teach their own. So those are like the three things that you really need: some way to aim, some way to hold your gun that's not your hands, and a way to see in the dark. All right. Everything after that is a bonus. Um, okay. The next thing I have down is what else do I need to buy to protect myself and be prepared? And the biggest thing that gets overlooked somehow is first aid equipment, such as tourniquets, band-aids, compression wraps, gauze, SAM splints, chest seals, right? Stuff like that. You go to the North American Rescue or other places that carry this kind of stuff. First aid is incredibly important, especially if you go out to public lands to shoot, because you're probably going to be quite a bit away from, excuse me, from emergency responders or just people in general. So if you're out, out in the boonies shooting, which can be fun, make sure that you have first aid stuff so you don't die out there, because that would be bad, right? I know it sounds very simple when I say it like that. Death, bad. But yeah, I mean, just don't overlook that. Make sure you guys go out with that kind of stuff as well. Um, and the last question and the biggest one that people getting into this world have is, what if I can't afford everything I need right now? Okay, well, the answer is a little simple. It's buy what's most important, starting with the gun, your holster, your sling, or your iron sight slash optic, right? Then you can add the rest as you go along in the order of what is important to you, right? And that might be just starting, right? Let's say you want to get a red dot, but you can't afford it for a rifle. Just start with basic iron sights, right? Get something that's good, but you can afford, and you can just save up and then buy that optic later. Like stuff like that. You can start with a cheaper product that's still reliable, and you can work your way up as you go along. So let's see. So in terms of asking for help, that's kind of how I view this stuff, and I throw a little bit of advice in there as well. Um, so that's I don't know if you have any feedback for me on that, Rich, or if there's any other
Yeah.
questions that you've thought of.
Yeah,
That's one of my show notes I had down.
that's great. Thanks for sharing that. I have a couple of questions that have popped up.
Sure.
First one is a lot of times when people go to the range by themselves for the first time, they're not really sure what range etiquette is,
Yeah.
right? But could you kind of like go over maybe like your top three pointers or top five pointers for just making sure you're following range etiquette so you don't do something silly?
Yeah. So for range etiquette, the biggest thing to do is whatever they say that their range safety rules are, yes, just follow them, right? It sounds stupidly simple, but that's the biggest one. They'll tell you their range safety rules. If you're unsure if something's okay etiquette wise, just ask the RSOs or the front desk people. They would much rather you ask them up front about it versus breaking the etiquette, and then they have to come over and have a not so pleasant conversation. In terms of general range etiquette, the four universal safety rules, right? Always shoot your gun as if it's loaded. Never point your gun at anything you're not willing to destroy, which in the case of a public range is anywhere that's not straight at the berm down range, right? Um, know your target's environment, and keep your finger off the trigger until you're ready to shoot and your sight's on target. So following those, you're going to be fine at pretty much every public range. If One thing that I've noticed for indoor ranges is they typically don't want you carrying a handgun from the back bench that they'll have set up to your stall. They'll usually give you some sort of tray. I've been guilty of breaking this one because I just wasn't thinking about it sometimes, like when I was very early on in my shooting days. because you're going, well, it's unloaded. It's like, okay, but they see you just holding a handgun. They don't know what's happening. Um, and also, if you're going by yourself and you don't own a gun, most ranges that rent guns won't rent you one. You have to go with a friend because unfortunately, people will self delete. Um, so that's why they won't rent you, like, especially handguns, they won't rent you a gun if you're by yourself because that is a very unfortunate reality that we have to deal with. They're, it is what it is. I know it sounds cruel to say it like that, but that's
Mhm.
the reality we have to work with, right? And you know, what's the plug? If anybody's ever struggling, just call the National Suicide Prevention Line, right? That's a quick plug for them. I'm not sure if I got the name right, but those organizations are out there. If anybody's struggling, please call them. We like having you here, right? But back to range etiquette, if you follow those things, the universal safety rules, always keep your pistols like either in the case, in the bag, or in one of the little trays they give you. Those are going to be good. And don't, if you see somebody up in a stall shooting, don't like go try to talk to them, right? That's because you don't want people to do that to you. You can wait till somebody steps off the stall, or if you see they're like loading mags and you have a question, like, "Hey, what gun are you shooting?" Stuff like that. Then it can be more acceptable to approach a person. Which again, everybody is different, right? So you don't know how people are going to react to that. I hope that answered kind of the range etiquette question
Yeah,
for the person who asked.
good stuff. All right. You have one other question. Are there like channels or communities that you'd recommend where people could get uh good information for people? Because I know if like the gun community can be really unforgiving, right? If you say or make a silly, a comment, there are plenty of people lurking in the comments that are more than willing to be very harsh with you. And I was just wondering if there are any like online communities or groups that you would recommend for people if they want to uh, be able to ask questions without having to worry about uh,
The blowback from it.
yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
so one that we just started, right? Fire. That's a good one from what I've seen. Nobody's being jerks in that. Um, in terms of the communities, I try not to be super online. Like I don't want to get into all the forums. That's just not my style for me,
Mhm.
right? So I don't know any off the top of my head. If you're looking for good, like, you know, pages to follow, you could follow somebody like Mr. Guns and Gear on YouTube. He posts a lot of very good gear review videos. Um, there's good YouTubers like that, or Honest Outlaws, another very good YouTuber. Like I watch both of their stuff. I don't get paid for saying that, right? I wish I did. That'd be great. But for online communities, personally, I'm just not really aware of those. T-Rex Arms is another good company that puts out very good content. So, and the reason I mention those too is because you can go through their comment section and you can ask comments there. Most of the people that are asking questions in there or on their Instagram pages, from what I've seen, it's a more friendly environment, shall we say, for people asking questions. So
Right.
it's like that kind of stuff. Yeah, in terms of like if you're looking for Reddit communities, I don't go on there, so I can't help you there, unfortunately. So I'm sorry to that person. But the one I can recommend because I'm in it is Fire, or the one that we recently started. So,
Right.
but I think that's more for instructors, isn't it?
Yeah, that's true. That's for
Yeah.
instructors.
Yeah.
But
Sorry, then I can't really help you there, unfortunately.
okay. All right. No worries. All right. Is there any other points that you might want to cover before we finish up, Garrett?
Oh, but actually, for that person though, what you can do too is because most instructors, myself included, have at least an email listed. You can always just email a bunch of instructors and ask questions as well. You might get an answer, you might not, but it's not public. So the chances of you getting, roasted for a silly question online are, you know, relatively low in that sense. So there's stuff like that where you can DM people on Instagram, like if you see instructors or whatever, you can
Right.
take the private route as well.
That's true.
So that's another way to do it. Or if you like see communities on Reddit or wherever, Facebook, wherever they are,
Mhm.
you can just like look in there and don't post and just see how people are treated when they ask questions that you have, that you're kind of thinking of too. And if you see them getting like good feedback, you can then go, okay, well, I can ask a good question here. Or if you see people just being rude and, whatnot, then you go, okay, well, I'm not going to be part of this because these people are mean. So I can help you at least in that way, I think.
Yeah.
But that's kind of what I would recommend as well. Just lurk in the
Yeah.
comments, and then if if it's the kind of people that you want to talk to, that you're not afraid are going to be merciless, then join them. But if you see them being merciless, then you know you can go elsewhere as well.
Yeah. Let's have a couple of comments to follow up with this topic. Thanks, Rick, for sharing these resources. Rick, who is in the comments, shared that, number one, check with your local gun group, right?
Yeah,
And number two, especially for the ladies, there's a lot of new gun owners that are women. A good resource that Rick is recommending is She Equips Herself. So,
yeah. I've met that lady at the San Diego Gun Show earlier this year. She was really cool. She's a
okay.
really cool lady.
Oh,
So,
nice.
and my wife and I talked to her a little bit. So that's somebody. If you're in the San Diego area, I think she's based there. So she
Okay.
was pretty cool.
Awesome. Okay.
But for
Great.
the ladies as well, sorry to interrupt you, but
Yeah, go
for the
ahead.
ladies as well, there's a lot of places that offer women's only classes. Um, I do those as well. But there's a lot of instructors that have range days only for women. A lot of ranges will have a women's class. So you can look for those because I get it, right? You're going to go in and you have a guy bring in a giant gun. It's going to make a bunch of noise and you're going to be going oh, that's overwhelming.
Hmm.
So for any of the ladies out there that are interested in that, find a women's only range day and you're probably going to have a much better experience getting into it. Or even just take a private lesson with someone. Let's say your range doesn't have those or you don't have those near you. Just find a range that is, or find an instructor near you through either like the NRA or the USCCA, whatever you think of either organization. They're, in my opinion, the two top organizations in terms of training, in terms of the quality of the materials that they have, right? Those, in my opinion, are the two top ones. It also helps that I'm certified through both of them, right? So I might be a little biased there. Fully admit that, but they do both put out excellent, excellent information. So don't be afraid to, right, ask for help. Just call the range, say, hey, are there any female instructors that you guys have that are really good? If not, are there any guys who work with a lot of women? Probably going to be a good bet for you.
Awesome. So, one of the other comments that came up or suggestions is that there's if you are a woman, definitely check out our Not Me SD program. It's at notmesd.org. And you can get help learning how to fire a gun, purchase a gun, or even getting your CCW, and it's a completely free program for women. And another suggestion that came up um, is that San Diego County Gun Owners has shooting socials. So if you go to sdcgo.org, it's a great, entry point if you want to try out shooting where it's not really instruction, but it's more of just, fun time at the range, with some friends where they just make sure you have a good time and also make sure that you have a good experience following also all those safety rules, all the four main safety rules. So those are something that you might also consider too if you're a first timer and looking for like a first time experience in a fun environment, safe environment, right? So awesome. All right. Well, thank you, Garrett, for
Of
being
course.
our instructor on tonight's lead talk. Um, can you let people know how to contact you and get a hold of you if they want to follow up with you?
Yeah, so my email is theprotectorsusa.com. Um, that's just my website.
Mhm.
And then you can email me directly through that, or you can find my stuff on my USCCA portal. I don't know if I still have my NRA one set up yet because I recently got certified through them, but my USCCA one does have a email way to email has my email linked on there too. One other thing I'll throw out there for everyone, this is really true for everyone. Get into martial arts if only for the reason that it will build confidence in yourself, right? So if you're ever in a situation where you might need to defend yourself, if you exude a lot of confidence, whoever is trying to victimize you might back down peacefully, right? Because it's great to have these tools, have the knowledge and everything, but I don't know about you guys, but personally, I hope I never have to shoot anyone. I really don't want to ever do that. I know how, I'm willing if I have to, but I hope I just am never in that situation. So if you do like martial arts like jujitsu, judo, kickboxing, Muay Thai, whatever you want to do, get in one just for that. And plus, if somebody is able to get the drop on you and they like they jump on, they get on you and you're wrestling for your gun, it's a really bad time to learn how to grapple when it's your life that's at stake versus when you're in a gym and it's a safe training environment, right? It's the same as going to a range with supervision. You're in a safe environment where you can grow and learn and make mistakes and it's going to be okay. So that's just another thing I like to promote as well, right? I know it's unrelated to guns, but get into martial arts, especially either judo or jujitsu. I'm a jujitsu guy, so I'm a little biased, but that's another thing to think about as well for everyone. And it will build confidence in yourself, which will help you avoid looking like easy prey to bad people. Excuse me.
Well, I mean, I think that's completely in line. It's like the whole idea people purchase a gun or get into firearm ownership to protect themselves, right? And then that's just another facet of a way to protect yourself, right? So I'm awesome. What's your website one more time?
TheProtectorsUSA.com.
All right, excellent. Well, thank you, Garrett. Thanks for everybody for tuning in for Lead
Yep.
Talks.
Thanks, Rich.
And tune in on Sundays to Gun Owners Radio, 5 to 7. And also next Monday when we have Lead Talks. By then, Mike should be back. And then we'll have another instructor to talk about a different topic to share with you guys. All right. Thanks, everybody.